You are loved with an everlasting love. That's what the Bible says. And underneath are the everlasting arms. This is your friend Elisabeth Elliot, talking with you again today about the great hymns of my life. The one that I want to talk to you about today is Like a River Glorious by that marvelous hymn writer Frances Ridley Havergal, a single woman born in the 19th century whose whole life was poured out for the Lord. One of those women who never married, never had the joys of a husband and a family, but gave herself for the life of the world and for the sake of the body. I read her biography many years ago, and it was one of those books that inspired my own spiritual life. I wanted to be as consecrated as Frances Ridley Havergal was. She wrote many hymns that are perhaps more familiar to some of you than this particular one. One that many of you would know is Take My Life, and Let It Be Consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Like a river glorious is God's perfect peace, over all victorious in its bright increase. Perfect, yet it floweth fuller every day. Perfect, yet it groweth deeper all the way. The chorus says, Stayed upon Jehovah, hearts are fully blessed, finding, as he promised, perfect peace and rest. Hidden in the hollow of his blessed hand, never foe can follow, never traitor stand. Not a surge of worry, not a shade of care, not a blast of hurry touch the spirit there. Every joy or trial falleth from above, traced upon our dial by the Son of love. We may trust him fully, all for us to do. They who trust him wholly find him wholly true. It was when I was a college student that this hymn became so meaningful to me. Like a river glorious is God's perfect peace. And we used to sing this very lustily as a family. I have 4 brothers and 1 sister. I was the soprano, my sister was the alto, and 2 of my brothers were bass and 2 were baritone. And so we always sang parts. My parents both played the piano, as did almost all the 6 of us. I'm not quite sure which ones didn't, but I think most of us at some time or other did play the piano. So we would take turns playing the piano, but everybody would sing. And I remember particularly singing this hymn when I was a Bible school student in Alberta. I went to a Bible school called Prairie Bible Institute up in Three Hills, Alberta, a school founded by a wonderful man by the name of L.E. Maxwell, author of a number of books, a man who had gone from Kansas City Bible College, I think it was, up to the prairies of Alberta because there were some farmers up there that wanted some Bible teaching. And they had written down to Kansas City Bible College asking if there was a student graduating who could come up and teach them the Bible. And so L.E. Maxwell volunteered, and he went up there and started out with 7 people in a farmhouse. And he was a most remarkable man. There were 1,600 students by the time I was there. And to hear that great tabernacle full of students singing this hymn was just a wonderful experience. And I remember the Dean of Women, Miss Ruth Deering, quoting those verses, They who trust him wholly find him wholly true. And I have found that to be true. The deeper my faith goes, the more I trust him, the more evidence I find of his absolute trustworthiness. And those of you that are a little shaky on whether or not you really can trust God, well, my advice to you is take the risk. Just bank everything on him. Take that leap, and you will find the more fully you trust him, the truer he will be to you. Then, when I went off finally to Ecuador in 1952, I spent the first 6 months learning Spanish, living with a national family that didn't speak any English in the city of Quito. But the highlight of the week was when we would go out on the bus, Jim Elliott, Pete Fleming, Dorothy Jones, and I, the 4 new missionaries, would take the bus out to HCJB, the missionary radio station, where they had a program every Sunday night called the Back Home Hour. That program was in English. They were broadcasting, I think, in 24 different languages, but they had English programs as well. So it was a thrill, having listened to Spanish 6 days a week, to go out there to HCJB and sit in the studio while this radio program was going on. And I can remember there singing this hymn then. Hidden in the hollow of his blessed hand, never foe can follow, never traitor stand. Not a surge of worry, not a shade of care, not a blast of hurry touch the spirit there. Well, I keep telling you that these are the great hymns of my life, and I've had to leave out so many that are like milestones in my life. I haven't got time to tell you my whole life story, have I? And you'd probably be bored to tears if I did, but there's hardly a hymn in my repertoire that doesn't have very vivid memories connected with it. The next hymn that I want to give you is Be Still, My Soul. And this is often sung to the tune Finlandia, the tune of the hymn We Rest on Thee, Our Shield and Our Defender, that the 5 men, my husband and 4 missionary colleagues, sang on the evening before they departed for Auca territory. But the words that I want to give you today are from Catherine A. von Schlegel's German original, translated by Jane Borthwick. And these are the words. Be still, my soul. The Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change, he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul. Thy best, thy heavenly friend, through thorny ways, leads to a joyful end. Be still, my soul. Thy God doth undertake to guide the future, as he has the past. Thy hope, thy confidence, let nothing shake. All, now mysterious, shall be bright at last. Be still, my soul. The waves and winds still know his voice, who ruled them while he dwelt below. Be still, my soul. The hour is hastening on when we shall be forever with the Lord, when disappointment, grief, and fear are gone, sorrow forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be still, my soul. When change and tears are past, all safe and blessed, we shall meet at last. And this meant a lot to me when I was a brand new missionary, living for the first time in the jungle. As I mentioned yesterday, I lived in Quito when I was learning Spanish. That was the first 6 months in Ecuador, 1952, and then in the fall of that year, I moved down into the western jungle to work with 2 English women missionaries, Barbara and Doreen, with a tribe of Indians called the Colorados. I lived in a thatched-roofed house along with my American colleague, Dorothy Jones, and next door were Doreen and Barbara. And there were many uncertainties. During that year, there were 3 staggering losses. I've told the story of that year in my book, These Strange Ashes, a book that deals with disappointments and difficulties and losses, and the fact that any new work that God gives us to do is going to turn out to be very different from what we imagined it to be. And I don't think I've ever talked to any returned missionary who didn't agree that missionary work turned out to be very different from what he expected. Well, what do we expect when we follow the Lord? Jesus was never guilty of false advertising. He told his disciples that if they followed him obediently and faithfully, they would have tribulation. But his word to them was, "Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." I had some difficulties even with fellow missionaries. Can you imagine that? And I was always longing and wishing that Jim Elliott, who was way over on the other side of the Andes working with a different tribe of Indians, would someday, somehow, propose to me, which eventually, as you know, he did. But in the meantime, waiting for 5.5 years for God's will about marriage, you can understand why this hymn meant so much to me. Be still, my soul. Thy God doth undertake to guide the future as he has the past. Thy hope, thy confidence, let nothing shake. All, now mysterious, shall be bright at last. And those lines, bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. If only I could just take you by the hand and look into your face and say, leave it to God. Just leave it to God to order and provide. In every change, he faithful will remain. Are some of you on the verge of moving? Or you've just moved? I met a lady the other day that said they had moved 31 times in 22 years. Can you top that? In every change, he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul. The psalmist says, be still and know that I am God.